Hello and welcome back to Excelsior Conversations. Today I have Ken Zacharias with me to discuss the nuances of 1031 exchanges. Ken, it's great to have you. Do you mind providing a brief bit of background on yourself and the firm?
We at CLA are one of the top 8 in size firms in the country. Our market is middle and small business, so that's our niche. We have 7,500 total team members across the country, multiple offices, and we can really do it all. And team focused, team driven, industry related driven. So we try to get our people to develop passion for an industry and quite frankly, that's what I do. I'm in a leadership role in our real estate industry, Wisconsin specifically, and that's what I do for the firm. I have lots of clients, but real estate is my passion and what I do for broader CLA.
And so, as you can tell, CLA is a terrific firm, and they really focus on that private company middle market space. You recently launched an office in Nashville, which is how I connected with you all, and you've planted a great flag here with really good folks. We'll provide contact information in the back end, but Ken, let's start with just the high level definition of what a 1031 exchange is, and maybe also, as importantly, what it is not.
Absolutely. And so far, so good. 1031 seems to be not a target of the new legislation. So it's should be around and vibrant for a long, long time. Basically, a 1031, Bryant, exchange is it's the ability to take an investment in real estate, relinquish it, and get an investment back in real estate. Now, it must be trade or business or investment real estate on the front end, and trade or business or investment real estate on the back end. Okay. 1031 used to be much broader in scope, but the Tax Cuts and Jobs Act shrunk it to basically just a real estate play. We can no longer trade an airplane for an airplane or machinery for machinery. Those are taxable sales and taxable reinvestments. Real estate has carved out a niche in the ability to trade from one property to another. So that's what we're doing. What a 1031 cannot be, we can't trade inventory assets or assets that are for sale. Residential lots, let's say, that are carved up for development. So it can't be that. We can't trade a fee simple real estate ownership for a partnership interest. We can get around that, but that's a technicality we can't do. We can also not trade personal use assets for trade or business assets, so or vice versa. So it's narrow, but broad. I should mention here that when we're trading a real estate investment, say we've got some investment land, raw land, okay, we can trade that into a hotel play or apartments, duplexes, commercial property rental, okay? Very broad in that, as long as it's trade or business or investment real estate for trade or business or investment real estate.
And so, as you pointed out, it's a highly statutory driven part of the real estate investing ecosystem. What are some of the nitty gritty details in terms of identification period? And on a related note, what is the 3 property rule?
First date to remember is the date of relinquishment of your property. The date you get rid of it, the date that closing statement occurs, you sell it. Basically sell it, okay? It's technically driven, so it is a trade, and we've got a lot of nuances to follow, but you're basically selling one and replacing it with another. So that's the date that starts everything rolling, okay? You have 45 days from that initial relinquishment of your property to identify what you want to go get in return. That's the identification period. 45 days, hard and fast rule, okay? We count them on our fingers. Then from the initial relinquishment date, you have 180 days to actually get those replacement assets, in your control. Okay, so 45 days to identify, 180 days to actually acquire the replacement property. Those are our 2 time frames. Now, the 3 property rule, that there's multiple identification rules. The 2 that we generally use are the 3 property rule. Okay, 3 properties you can identify. You need options, because if you identify one thing and your 45 days is up, and then you go to negotiate and you can't acquire that property, your exchange is done. Okay, that's why the 3 property rule gives us options in what we can try to acquire to complete our exchange. 3 property rule, simply, it's 3. Okay, 3 properties of any value. Let's do an example. I have $100,000 piece of property that I'm giving up. Okay, I can identify a $300,000 piece, a $1 million piece, and a $100,000 piece. Doesn't matter the value, as long as I've identified only 3 as replacements to complete my exchange, I'm fine. That's the 3 property rule. Okay, now once you go over 3 properties and get into a 4th, 5th, 6th, want more options, then there's what's called the 200% rule. So you look at what the value of what you gave up. In my example, it was $100,000. I can identify $200,000 in potential replacement property now. Okay, it's a cap. Okay, so in that instance, I could identify 20 or 10 $20,000 pieces of real estate, and then pick 5 of them to complete my exchange in that example. Okay, that's the 200% rule.
So conceptually, folks who are entering into 1031 exchange are trying to defer taxes and that tax liability. In that context, what is a realized gain, a recognized gain, and what is the term boot? How does it come into play in this context?
So the basic tenet of the deferred exchange, if you want a fully deferred exchange, you first let me answer the question. Realized gain is actual gain on the transaction, as if you were to sell it. Okay, fair market value, sales price, less your basis, less your closing costs that apply to that sale. That's your realized gain. That's what I would pay tax on if I did not do a deferred exchange. Okay, realized gain. Recognized gain now is if we go through the motions and do the exchange and we don't quite get there for whatever reason, there's a variety. The recognized gain is the amount of gain that you actually will pay tax on. That's the difference between realized and recognized. Okay, so now for fully deferred exchange, as I was going in my example, if I gave up a property that had $100,000 worth of value, okay, $100,000 worth of value, no debt. Okay, my 2 rules that I gotta watch are I have to trade equal or up in value, and then equal or up in equity. Now, in my example, I have a $100,000 piece of property that I'm relinquishing with 0 debt on it. So my value is 100 and my equity is 100. Okay. Now I go and replace with a $200,000 piece of property. Okay. I've doubled my value, and now I could finance that extra $100,000 to get there. So I put $100,000 of debt on this replacement property. I've traded up in value, or traded up in value, and my equity is equal at 100 and 100. So fully deferred exchange. Now, if the concept of boot is basically cash that I receive, If I receive cash or other property that's not qualifying, that's considered boot, and that's taxable. Okay, that's taxable, and it's taxable. I'll make this note from the top down, and I'll give you two little examples of this. In that last example that I just used, we got a $200,000 piece of property, but say I put $150,000 of debt on it. What happens? 50 grand's going into my hand. Okay, I failed the equity rule. Even though I traded up, I'm paying tax on that boot or that cash that came to me. Okay. Same example. I gave up one for 100 and I replaced it with a property for $90,000. Okay. That $10,000 that I didn't spend is going to fall out, come into my hands, and I'm actually going to pay tax on 100% of that $10,000. Top down, I pay tax. So that's the realized gain, the recognized gain, and the concept of boot or money in your hands.
And what are the transactional costs here? We hear the term exchange expenses thrown around. Could you maybe provide a little bit more detail on that front?
Basically, go to your closing statement, and some of them are very complex and loaded with a lot of things. Some qualify, some don't. The basic transaction costs are the cost to actually sell or replace the real estate. Okay, that would be brokerage commissions, transfer fees and taxes, title fees, deeding, accounting and attorney fees for and title company fees for doing the exchange. Those kind of expenses can be loaded on the closing statement, and those are the fees that would always be baked into what the realized gain actually is. That's really the way to look at it. Okay, it's costs that would reduce that gain.
So as you can tell, very detailed, like I said, statutory driven, codified part of the commercial real estate world with a lot of esoteric issues, but there are some important ancillary topics. Could you maybe run through what a reserve exchange is, a build-to-suit exchange, et cetera?
First one I would like to just mention is there's another concept out there, the opportunity zone concept, Brian, that is another tax deferral mechanism. Okay, albeit not totally long range, but it's got, and people may have heard about it. It's got that shorter term 5-year now horizon to defer that taxable gain. So oftentimes we'll use in big transactions where you maybe don't want to do 1031 and replace all of your relinquished property with remember, if you're doing a fully deferred 1031, you have to go all in on the replacement property and get bigger. Okay, equal or bigger. If you combine this with this opportunity zone concept where you actually go smaller, remember my example of the 90, go a little bit smaller. I could have taken that $10,000 gain and actually deferred it through an opportunity. It's a capital gain, so I defer it through an opportunity zone concept, and using two different code sections, do the 1031, which controls the process, and anything that leaks over as a capital gain, I can defer under the opportunity zone. So we'll use that to diversify a taxpayer's holding, that they don't want to go all in. Because remember, you might have got a smoking deal selling your property, but you got to buy one in the same climate, the same market, right? Mm-hmm. So it's a challenge. Reverse exchange, you mentioned that. We do the forward exchange. What basically happens is we give up our property, we identify a replacement property within 45 days, and within 180 days, acquire that. Now, technically, this is all done through a qualified intermediary, and we can't touch the cash. Those are just some of the basics. And again, it's very nuanced and complex, but very easy to follow. A reverse exchange is when we just have to acquire that replacement property first. Okay, we can't. It's always better to do a forward exchange than a reverse, but sometimes that seller of the replacement property won't cooperate, etc. So we have to acquire it first. Okay, so what you do is the replacement property is acquired, and then we have 45 days to identify what we're going to give up. Well, we kind of already know it. And then we have 180 days to actually get that sold. Okay. The nuance with the reverse is, remember, you got all your money in the property you're trying to sell, right? The QI, somebody's standing in your shoes to help you acquire this replacement property, which you can't physically take title to until we sell our old one. So it's a standby thing. Well, as the taxpayer, you're gonna finance everything for this person. You're gonna finance the replacement property and all that kind of stuff up front and cover all of that, and then hope you can sell your relinquished property. If you don't, guess what? You're gonna own two properties. That's how reverse works. Can be done. We do it all the time, but there are caveats to it. Build to suit. Yes, you can relinquish your property, create this pot of cash with the qualified intermediary, and then identify and replace with a property that's not in existence yet. Or maybe it's in existence but needs a lot of work to get over our fair market value bar. In those instances, we call it a build to suit, where again, somebody steps in our shoes, acquires that replacement property for us, contracts with a contractor to actually build it, and sometime by 180 days, they actually give you that replacement property. Doesn't have to be done. We just need enough value on the ground. So there's another nuance. Drop and swap is see it often where we've got a property in an LLC or a partnership with multiple partners, and they don't have the same vision. Some want to cash out, and some want to do exchanges for replacement properties. What happens there, Brian, is we need a different form of ownership. And that's your fractional ownership, or your tenant in common that you did mention. We pull the property out of the partnership, which that's not a taxable event. Each of the owners owns a piece, or a tenant in common piece of that property, and then they're able to negotiate the sale of their piece of property to the ultimate outside. Of course, they all sell it to the same outside buyer. That's the concept, but it's doable. We need time to season that transaction. Government's all over that, and it's got to act like a tenant in common up front, and then the folks technically negotiate the deal on the back end. That leads us to my last little topic, fractional ownership. Again, we talked about it in the context of pulling it out and doing the drop and swap, but oftentimes you'll sell out of a property and you don't want to manage. You don't want to manage that replacement property. You're getting out of that. So a whole industry has been, it was there before, and now it's more streamlined. It's the syndicated industry for people owning fractional pieces of real estate going as their exchange, as their replacement properties. That's where the Delaware Statutory Trust, or DST, comes in. It's all it is fractional ownership, and this qualifies as a piece of trade or business or investment real estate, even though your hands are tied and it looks like you're getting into a partnership, technically you're not. Okay. Remember it up front. I said we cannot exchange our real estate for entry into a partnership. A DST and a tenant in common arrangement is not a partnership, and you got to go through the pains of and the sponsors typically do go through those elements and make sure that it qualifies under the rules as a piece of real estate. That's all it is, and you're sharing in the arrangement.
So this has been terrific. It's a great breakdown, but there is a lot more that people could dig into. You all produce great content. You're always great partners to do these type of educational pieces with. If people are interested in learning more about the work you do in the real estate sector or want to connect with you directly, what is the best way for them to get on the distribution list and learn more?
We do have something called CLA Real Estate Insights, and we've got a blog. So go to our CLA website and click on Real Estate Insights, and that'll get you into all kinds of content. And certainly we're human beings, and we love to take calls like this. We'd love to spread the word and provide thought leadership. That really is the CLA way, especially in with the COVID and the new digital world. We're happy that we put that stuff out all the time. So go take a look at it, or call us.
Okay, terrific. And we'll be sure to include the details about the blog and the content information in the show notes. And Ken, I want to thank you for the time and wish you the best of luck with everything moving forward.
My pleasure, and you have a great day, and very nice to participate. Thank you, sir.